Well, you have only to look at the ABA ratings on the nominees that Trump has sent to this committee. But the problem is this committee eliminated ABA ratings. For the first time in decades, 60, 70 years maybe, we've decided we don't care what the American Bar Association finds out when they interviewed other judges and lawyers in the community for these nominees. Used to be every president for 50, 60 years has submitted the nominations to the ABA for ratings. This committee decided this year for the first time in decades not to even ask for an ABA rating. Why? What are they afraid they're going to find? I think what they'll find is, if they have an ABA rating, a better understanding of each of the nominees. There have been nominees found unqualified. I think the number was 7 or 8 in the first Trump presidency that were considered by this committee, and most of whom were approved. That's an indication that the community doesn't believe this person is up to the job, and yet they were pushed by the Trump administration. So to have any bragging or boasting about nominees, why did you eliminate the ABA rating, for goodness sakes? That's been there for a long time, and now you don't want Trump nominees to face that kind of scrutiny. That tells us a lot. Mr. Chairman, nearly 5 years ago, America was brought to the brink of a full-blown constitutional crisis. You remember it. It culminated in a deadly January 6th attack on the United States Capitol building. Remember when we were evacuated from the floor of the Senate by Capitol Police, who told us that the insurrectionists were on their way to the chamber? We all filed out quickly to find a safe place. That is an amazing story that is now part of American history. Think for just 1 second if we had been notified that the House of Commons had its door broken down and mobsters had taken over the House of Commons in England. Our response would have been incredulous. A great country like Great Britain had its major institution that had been recognized for decades, if not centuries, invaded by a mob group that forced them to leave session and to file out as quickly as possible. How could that happen to a great nation like England? What is going on there? Who's in charge there? Well, we remember it well. The architects of the January 6th crisis in the U.S. Capitol, who sought to subvert the will of the American people and overturn the results of a free and fair election. The architects of that mobster group, President Trump and his MAGA allies. Across the country, state and federal judges dismissed the crazy lawsuits brought by the president's supporters, affirming that he had been the true winner in the last election. It just wasn't true. Joe Biden won the presidency. President Trump is still in full denial, and you hear all our nominees writhing in pain as we ask them the question, well, who won that election? Well, I'm not supposed to say that Biden won the elections, so I'll just say he was sworn in as president, carefully tiptoeing through the facts of history because they're afraid that it might offend the President of the United States. This reality has been a thorn in President Trump's side. He's taken unprecedented steps to whitewash history, to whitewash what all of us saw with our own eyes. Just like the demolished East Wing of the White House, President Trump is taking a wrecking ball to our democracy and our history. Day after day, he's dismantling our constitutional order to protect himself and his followers and to attack his political opponents. Look at the action he's taken just since the last time this committee met. After President Trump's indefensible blanket pardon of more than 1,500 January 6 rioters, he is also pardoning this group, saying they're above the law for unrelated offenses. Let me tell you a story. Last week, he pardoned Dan Wilson. Name anything to you? Dan Wilson was a member of the Oath Keepers Militia, a far right-wing group. Mr. Wilson pled guilty to conspiracy to impede and injure a law enforcement officer and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He remained incarcerated due to felony conviction for illegally possessing firearms. But President Trump decided that Mr. Wilson should receive a pardon for this offense as well. The president also pardoned Suzanne K., sentenced to 18 months in prison after threatening to shoot FBI agents. Ms. K had posted a video online saying she would exercise, quote, "my Second Amendment right to shoot your effing ass." if FBI agents interviewed her about participation in January 6th. So much for protecting law enforcement being tough on crime. Another Trump pardon. Yesterday, we learned another horrific crime committed by a January 6 rioter who President Trump pardoned. Andrew Paul Johnson was arrested first in Tennessee and then in Florida for multiple child sexual abuse offenses. Mr. Johnson, who referred to himself as, quote, an American terrorist and a proud January 6er, faced charges of lewd and lascivious molestation of an 11-year-old child and two others between the ages of 12 and 16. President Trump also recently granted preemptive pardons to more than 70 of his allies who embraced the big lie and attempted to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Meanwhile, at the FBI, Director Patel continues to carry out an unprecedented purge of those FBI officials who simply worked on cases involving January 6th or the president. The FBI Agents Association said Director Patel, quote, has disregarded the law and launched a campaign of erratic and arbitrary retribution, and agents simply being assigned to an investigation and conducting it appropriately within the law should never be grounds for termination. So say the FBI agents. And at Department of Justice, prosecutors who simply mentioned the reality of what actually happened and we witnessed on January 6th in a sentencing memo were placed on administrative leave. I am a student, as most of us are of my age, of the Cold War and the Soviet Union. And they used to rewrite history on a regular basis when it was inconvenient. That's exactly what's happening with the Trump administration on January 6th. The president also continues to target communities simply because they did not vote for him, including my home state of Illinois. He claims the administration is targeting the worst of the worst. You've heard the speeches he gives at rallies. Rapists, murderers, terrorists, criminally insane, illegally coming in the United States. We're going to set out to find them and remove them. According to the administration's own data so far, I hope you're keeping score, of the more than 600 people arrested in Illinois under Operation Midway Blitz, 16 out of 600 have a criminal history that poses any risk to public safety. That's less than 3%. As the Trump administration tramples on the Constitution, I'm sorry my colleagues on the other side of the aisle remain silent. You know better, and so do I. Silent as he imposes higher prices on the American people with tariff policies, silent as he guts the federal workforce, and above all, silent because they fear political retribution. We've never faced anything like this in our modern history. Our democracy is struggling to survive. Will someone speak up on the other side? I yield.